All right, so today we are diving into the Book of Mormon, more specifically 3 Nephi.
Okay.
And we're going straight to the source with this one, looking at the 1830 edition.
Right.
And we're gonna unpack it and
Yeah.
really get into some of the nitty-gritty details and the spiritual journey is contained within.
Absolutely. And I think one of the first things that you'll notice about 3 Nephi, it's not just a collection of parables or teachings like you might find in other parts of the scriptures.
Yeah.
This book really grounds us in a specific time and place.
And it even goes so far as to pinpoint the setting.
Right.
Very specifically to the 91st year after this leader named Helaman takes charge.
Yeah. And Helaman's a name that might ring a bell for some of our listeners, but for those who haven't had the chance to really dive into the earlier books, he was a pretty remarkable leader.
Okay.
Well, I mean, he guided the Nephites through some really intense periods of warfare, social upheaval.
Yeah.
But his sons, they kind of faced a different set of challenges as they navigated this time of growing wickedness and doubt.
And that's where things get really interesting.
How so?
Well, the book kicks off with this countdown to the birth of Jesus Christ, but it's not like a quiet countdown. It's more like a cosmic light show.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What kind of light show are we talking about?
Think dramatic celestial events, a night with no darkness, a brand new star appearing.
Wow, I can see why people would be talking about that for generations. But it's not just for shock value, right?
Definitely not. The text really emphasizes that earlier prophets predicted these exact events centuries before they happened. It's like they're saying, see, we told you so, prophecy fulfilled.
So it's all about establishing this pattern of prophecy and fulfillment,
Yeah.
showing that God has a plan and is sticking to it.
Exactly. And that this plan is unfolding through history, often in these really dramatic ways. It's not just random events, it's all part of this larger, divinely orchestrated plan.
Okay, so walk me through it. How does this grand plan go off the rails?
Well, after the signs of Christ's birth, they have this period of peace and prosperity. I mean, we're talking full-blown golden age, spiritual renewal, rebuilding cities, establishing just laws. It's like everything you could want. The problem is it doesn't last.
Let me guess. They got comfortable. Started taking the good times for granted.
Right. Prosperity often leads to complacency, which leads to pride, materialism, and eventually, well, back to wickedness. The cycle starts all over again.
A tale as old as time, like you said.
You do.
But in this case, it sounds like the consequences get pretty intense.
Oh yeah, each cycle seems to bring even more chaos and destruction. We're introduced to this group called the Gadianton robbers.
Okay, Gadianton robbers. Sound like a band of rogue outlaws. Who were they exactly?
More like a highly organized criminal network, they were wreaking havoc on society, disrupting any sense of peace and order that had been established. They're like a symptom of this deeper moral decay.
So not just petty thieves, but a real threat to the fabric of their society.
Exactly. They represent this downward spiral that's happening, and it doesn't stop there. Things get really bad with this massive 3-day period of darkness, storms, earthquakes, the whole shebang. Imagine the terror and confusion as the very ground beneath their feet is shifting.
And I'm guessing this isn't just some random natural disaster, right?
Not at all. It's explicitly described as divine judgment, like a cosmic response to the people's choices. What's really interesting is that this cataclysm coincides with the death of Jesus Christ in the Holy Land, drawing a direct connection between these two seemingly separate events.
So it's like this ripple effect across continents, even across the cosmos. What happens in one place has an impact everywhere else.
That's the idea. And right in the aftermath of all this destruction, when the dust settles, so to speak, there's this incredible moment. Imagine, after all that chaos and fear, a voice booms across the land. It's like this beacon of hope in their darkest hour.
You can almost picture it, right?
Yeah.
The Nephites they're burdened by wickedness, they're full of despair, and then suddenly they're bathed in this celestial light. And there, descending from the heavens, is Jesus Christ himself.
Cue the heavenly chorus.
It's this incredible moment of divine intervention.
Yeah.
And it's not just an appearance.
Right.
The text really emphasizes the awe, the just overwhelming joy that the Nephites feel in his presence. It's like time stands still as Jesus begins to minister among them, offering teachings, performing miracles.
Yeah, and establishing his church. Right.
Exactly.
You know, and it's interesting, it's not just a repeat of what we read about in the Bible.
Right.
This isn't just a, hey, remember me, I did this other stuff over there, now I'm going to do it over here.
Right.
He's really tailoring his message to the Nephites and the challenges that they're facing.
It's like he's He's weaving their history, their unique experiences into his teachings. And it creates this tapestry that feels both deeply personal and universally relevant.
So specific, but also universal.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into some of these teachings, because we know he speaks about repentance, baptism, living a Christ-like life. I mean, these are all themes that we see throughout his ministry. But is there anything unique or surprising about how these teachings are presented in 3 Nephi?
Well, I think one of the things that really stands out is this emphasis on living a life that's actually aligned with the teachings.
Oh, okay.
It's not enough to simply believe, right? You have to act on those beliefs.
Yeah, it's putting faith into action.
Exactly. And he really stresses the transformative power of his gospel.
Okay.
How it can reshape not just individuals, but entire societies.
Yeah, it's that blueprint that we were talking about earlier.
It is, yeah.
And what's really interesting is the level of detail he gets into, like with baptism, for instance. He gives super specific instructions, even dictating the exact words to be used.
Sounds like he's trying to avoid any confusion or misinterpretations.
Right. And it's not just about getting the ritual right. It points to this bigger theme of unity that's really important in the Book of Mormon.
Unity, how so?
Well, throughout the Book of Mormon, a lot of the conflicts and problems come from people disagreeing about how to interpret their faith, how to practice it. It's like Jesus is anticipating that and heading it off at the pass.
Let's not sweat the small stuff, guys. Focus on the big picture here.
Exactly. And it's not just baptism. When he establishes his church, he specifically says not to argue about what to call it. It's like the name game was important even back then. But again, it's about focusing on the core message, not the details that divide us.
It's a good message for any time period, really.
But he's also acknowledging that it's not going to be easy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That there are going to be challenges.
He doesn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
He's very real with them about the persecution, the constant struggle against temptation.
Yeah.
In fact, he even warns them about the future. He prophesies about the eventual destruction of their civilization if they stray from his teachings.
And that's where I think the Book of Mormon expands beyond just the immediate narrative, right? It's bringing in this much larger historical panorama.
Right. It connects their experience to this much grander scheme.
No, okay.
For example, he talks about the scattering and gathering of Israel,
Right.
which would have resonated deeply with them.
Yeah.
He's reminding them that they are part of this larger covenant people, descendants of the house of Israel, who were led away from Jerusalem centuries earlier.
So he's placing their story
Yeah.
within this grander tapestry of God's plan, connecting their past, present, and future to the destiny of Israel as a whole.
Yes, and it's remarkable.
But then it goes even further.
It does. It goes beyond Israel.
He also talks about the Gentiles.
Right.
What's their role in all of this?
Yeah. And that's, I think, where the Book of Mormon takes on this whole other level of significance, because he's talking about a time when the Gentiles will play a very crucial role in God's plan.
Almost like he's opening this window to the future.
Yeah.
And we're getting a glimpse of this plan,
Right.
that it spans generations, it spans continents.
It's huge.
It makes you realize just how expansive and inclusive this message really is.
Absolutely. And he even talks about a time when the Gentiles will receive the fullness of the gospel and really have this vital role in sharing it with the world.
And that's where the Book of Mormon comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's through this record that's been preserved and brought forth centuries later that we as Gentiles can access these teachings.
It's like this bridge between their world and ours.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's not just about having this historical knowledge, right?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, the Book of Mormon really emphasizes this idea of personal revelation.
Yes.
Of receiving your own spiritual witness of its truth.
It's not enough to just read about it. You have to experience it for yourself.
Okay, so what does that even mean?
Right.
What does it mean to receive a spiritual witness?
That's a question that each person has to kind of wrestle with on their own,
Okay.
But the Book of Mormon suggests that it comes through sincere prayer, through pondering the scriptures, and really trying to live in harmony with God's commandments.
It's about making space for that divine communication, right?
Yes, exactly.
Tuning into that still small voice.
Exactly.
Wow. And then when you do connect,
Yeah,
that's where that unshakable testimony comes in.
it does. It's a powerful thing. Okay, so we've got this whole cycle of righteousness and wickedness, divine intervention, warnings of judgment. What's the ultimate message here? Where does it all lead?
That's where this idea of the gathering of scattered Israel comes in. It's this central theme about a future restoration where the righteous are brought together and, well, those who haven't followed God's path face the consequences.
So it's like this grand sorting out, a cosmic reckoning.
In a way, yeah. But it's also about more than just punishment. It's about this idea of God's power being made known to everyone, giving everyone a chance to choose. And along the way, we meet some pretty fascinating characters. Remember those prophecies about the signs of Christ's birth?
Yeah, the night without darkness, the new star.
Well, those were supposedly predicted centuries earlier by prophets like Zenos and Zenoch.
Zenos and Zenoch. Those names sound familiar, but I can't quite place them. Who were they again?
They're these kind of mysterious figures shrouded in legend. We don't know a ton about them, but their stories add this whole other layer to this idea of prophecy and God working through human history. And then there's this whole concept of a New Jerusalem, a city of ultimate peace and righteousness.
Okay, New Jerusalem. That rings a bell. It's like this utopian ideal, right? But is it a literal city, a metaphor, or something in between?
It's a question that's been debated for centuries. Is it a physical place we can point to on a map, or is it more of a symbol of this restored community of believers? It's up for interpretation, but it definitely captures this longing for a world where things are right, where peace and righteousness reign supreme.
It's a powerful image, a city like that. But there's something that's been bugging me. Remember when Jesus mentioned having other sheep, not part of this fold?
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating detail.
It always stood out to me. Like, who are these other sheep? What's their story?
It's easy to skip over, but you're right, it's huge when you think about it. Jesus is hinting at this much bigger picture, a ministry that goes way beyond what we see in the scriptures, even beyond what's in the Book of Mormon itself.
So it's not just about this one group of people, this one time period.
Exactly. It points to this idea of a universal plan, a plan that encompasses all of humanity.
Makes you wonder who else heard his message. What about those who lived and died in parts of the world completely untouched by these stories, whether it's the Bible or the Book of Mormon?
Tough questions. Ones that have puzzled theologians for ages. But it does make you think bigger, you know? It pushes us to consider the scope of God's reach. It challenges those traditional ideas about who's in and who's out.
It does make you wonder, are there multiple paths? Is there something that connects us all, even if we come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different corners of the world?
That's the beauty of it, I think. The Book of Mormon sparks more questions than it answers.
It certainly has for me. It's like we're not just reading a history book here. We're grappling with these fundamental questions about faith, about humanity, about our place in all of this.
And that's what makes this book so compelling, even today. It challenges us, makes us wrestle with these big ideas, confront our own assumptions. It's not just about accepting what's written, it's about engaging with it.
It definitely keeps you on your toes. And speaking of engaging with it, we've barely scratched the surface here. I mean, this deep dive has been incredible, but there's so much more to explore.
Oh, absolutely. There are layers upon layers here. We've talked about prophecies and judgments, spiritual journeys and divine interventions, but there's so much we haven't even touched on.
And that's the exciting part. The Book of Mormon, it claims to offer a fullness of the gospel. But what does that even mean? How do we make sense of it? How does it connect to our lives, our own journeys?
Those are questions we all have to wrestle with ourselves. It's about that personal connection, that individual search for meaning.
It's an invitation to keep digging, keep asking those tough questions. And maybe, just maybe, those answers will lead us to a deeper understanding, not just of this ancient text, but of ourselves.
Beautifully said.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into 3 Nephi.
The time flew by.
It really did. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you? What questions are you left with? Keep the conversation going in the comments below. And as always, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey of exploration and discovery.
Until next time.
Until next time.